Okay, this video series is going to be a video series on a little known fact about the Gettysburg battlefield, and it's going to be entitled the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. Now, not many people who visit Gettysburg realize that at one time an electric powered trolley actually made its way from the point that we're looking at now through the town of Gettysburg down into and around and over the Gettysburg battlefield, and then made its way back into town. And we're going to talk about that in this series of one of the secrets of the battlefield of Gettysburg, and we're going to call this the Gettysburg Electric Trolley Part 1. Now, a little bit about the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. It was the Gettysburg Electric Railway Company was chartered on August the 4th of 1891. It was incorporated on July 28th, 1892. And in January of 1893, the borough of Gettysburg granted the Gettysburg Electric Railway Company right-of-way on all principal streets in the town. Now, the railway secured the right-of-way west and north of the borough of Gettysburg, but tracks were never built there. Now, the rail bed construction of the trolley began on April of 1893, and the electric power company, which sat right here where this building is today, and this electric power plant had actually brought power to the borough of Gettysburg in 1893 for the first time. Now, the trolley also crossed at one point the Round Top Branch, which was a full-size steam-operated railroad, and we're going to look at that in a later video. Now, this trolley was very debatable right from the beginning, and in fact there was a 1896 Supreme Court, which was the U.S. versus the Gettysburg Electric Railway, that for the first time in our country used eminent domain for historic preservation. Of course, the railway here existed from 1896 until its closure in 1916, and then in 1917 the tracks were removed. As I said, it was very controversial right from the beginning, and in this video series we are actually going to take you on the route of the original Gettysburg Electric Trolley through the town and onto the battlefield. We're going to show you some remnants of where the trolley bed once was, and then we're going to share photographs of either the trolley itself or the tracks that went across the battlefield. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 1. And the power plant that once stood here where this building was, the tracks actually came out of the building and headed in this direction along the street until it got up here to Chambersburg Street. At that time there was a large hotel that stood where the 7-Eleven was, and the trolley made a left onto what is today Chambersburg Street, right in front of the Henry Huber House, which we can see here in the distance. So we are walking on what is the old Gettysburg Electric Trolley, and we're following the route as it made its way down toward the battlefield. In our next video, we'll pick it up near the town square. As I said, the trolley went up here and then made a left onto what is today Chambersburg Street until it got down to the Chambersburg Square. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 2. I'm here at this historic Gettysburg Square, and on Part 2, we left off with the Gettysburg Electric Trolley coming up to the square. Now, when it got to the square, it proceeded down Baltimore Street, past the historic David Will's house, and headed on this side of the street all the way down Baltimore Street. And as we walk down Baltimore Street in the next few videos, we're going to take a quick look at some of the historic buildings that it might have passed, or would have passed rather. And there were basically two types of trolley tours. There was a tour which allowed the rider to be in the car and drive through the battlefield. And then there was a little bit more of an expensive tour, which allowed the riders to be accompanied by a licensed guide. And they would get out on a few spots and wander around. This is one of the buildings here, the historic Fonstock Brothers building that the electric trolley passed on here, heading southbound on the western side of Baltimore Street. Also, the historic Adams County Courthouse, which was built in 1859, was also one of the buildings that it would have passed. And ironically enough, this building also used as a field hospital. The tracks laid right here in front of this building, and over in front of the Adams County Courthouse today is a wayside marker that has a photograph taken of the Adams County Courthouse in 1915. And if you look in front of the courthouse right here, you can actually see the trolley tracks. And I will post that photograph on a later video. Now again, as the riders were on these particular trolleys, what may have been happening at the time as the trolley proceeded down this road is that if it was the guided trolley tour, that guide may have begun to explain the significance of the different buildings that the electric trolley would have passed, such as the courthouse being used for a field hospital. Also, the compiler office there with the Penelope Cannon, which we did a video on earlier. Of course, the church here that Abraham Lincoln attended, and many of the other buildings that the trolley passed as it headed south on the western side of Baltimore Street. So you can get a little bit of an idea that if you were able to go on this tour between 1896 and 1916, what the rider may have experienced. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 3. And in Part 3, we left coming in this direction down Baltimore Street. We had passed the courthouse. And the electric trolley continued here on the western side of Baltimore Street and passed, again, more historic buildings like the Andrew Woods house, which is here on the right. Andrew Woods, as we shared in an earlier video, was a carriage trimmer. And again, the riders of this particular trolley could see all the different historic homes that were here and witnesses to the battle. Tilly Pierce's house, the Shriver house. Of course, further up the road would be the Garlock house. And the Garlock house was actually the home where a general was actually hid in a woodshed behind the house during the battle. And of course, the electric trolley would continue to proceed. Ironically enough, this is almost the identical route that Abraham Lincoln rode on horseback on November 19th, 1863, as he came to dedicate the cemetery here in Gettysburg. And I'm sure that any guided trolley tour would have mentioned that in the tour. Of course, here, this is the house of the Henry Garlock house, in which General Schimmelfing was hid in a woodshed behind it. It sits here at 321 and 323 Baltimore Street. And again, as the trolley proceeded down southbound here on Baltimore Street, you have to excuse the traffic, but it would proceed again to follow the basic same parade route as Abraham Lincoln did on November the 19th, 1863. And this right here is kind of the heart, here where Baltimore and South are today. Of course, right here is the Sweeney House, which is one of the more popular houses in town. It has a lot of battle damage still left to it. Today it's called the Farnsworth House. Across the street is Twin Sycamores. And of course, the sycamores that are stand here and in the distance over there are witness trees that Abraham Lincoln passed by on the afternoon of November 19th, 1863. Here's the Sweeney house here with the bullet damage done on the side of the house. And again, the trolley would proceed southbound on Baltimore Street. We're going to pick it up as it would go down Baltimore Street and then bend to the left and follow Baltimore Street. We're going to pick it up near the East Cemetery Hill area on our next part. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 4. Came from our last video in that direction, heading here on Baltimore Street. Now, the Gettysburg Electric Trolley began to go up Cemetery Hill here, and it was in this area of the National Cemetery and East Cemetery Hill where the Gettysburg Electric Trolley made its first stop. If you had paid for the more expensive tour, you would have got off the trolley and went through the National Cemetery and on East Cemetery Hill area, led by a guide. And then you would pick the trolley up over on the Taneytown Road. The trolley would actually go further beyond up Baltimore Street before bearing to the right and going on the outskirts of that time, which was the Evergreen Cemetery. And we're going to show you the old trolley path. It did pass by some more historic buildings like the Soldiers' Orphanage building right here before proceeding up to the National Cemetery and East Cemetery Hill. And there are a few photographs, which I will post, from this area showing the Gettysburg Electric Trolley on the trolley tracks, which sat here on the road, passing by the cemetery and East Cemetery Hill. Now, I do want to point out that in those photographs, this iron fence that you see today around the National Cemetery once sat on the other side of the road in front of East Cemetery Hill. It was moved here later, and this is, as we talked about in an earlier video, the Sickles witness fence. This was the fence that sat around Lafayette Park in Washington, D.C. when Daniel Sickles murdered his wife's lover. The fence was brought here to Gettysburg, probably as a reminder to Dan Sickles that he got away with murder, put on East Cemetery Hill, and then later moved to the National Cemetery. This trolley path proceeded up this direction, made its first stop here at the Evergreen National Cemetery and East Cemetery Hill area. Now, the trolley itself proceeded further down just above the rise here, and then it would bear off to the right before going to the outskirts, of the Evergreen Cemetery. And we're going to walk right up here to the gatehouse and then end this part before continuing it on part 6. And of course, the Gateway was one of the more famous buildings in 1863, and there's plenty of photographs of it that had sustained battle damage. So this has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 5. And our last video, Part 5, we just came over this hill. The Gettysburg Electric Trolley would then proceed southbound here on the Baltimore Pike. And they would pass this 5th New York Light Artillery Battery that was commanded by Captain Elijah D. Taft. This battery actually, on July 2nd, fired these guns in this direction just beyond Culp's Hill. They had a duel with Latimer's Confederate battery out on Benner's Hill. One of the guns actually ruptured. And then, of course, on July 3rd, Elijah Taft's battery would fire in a westward direction from the Longstreet's Assault Pickett's Charge action. This battery here was engaged very hotly on July 2nd and July 3rd of 1863. It was one of the only batteries that were actually placed here in the cemetery on the evening of July 1st as the Union troops made this their rallying point. Now, Evergreen Cemetery in 1863 was only 9 years old. There wasn't as many graves as there are today, and of course this whole section of the cemetery all the way down the pike there to the hotel in the distance beyond the trees is new. Its border in 1863 was just beyond this tree right here, and that's where the trolley then turned to the right, and it went along the outskirts of the cemetery. And we're actually going to walk. You see this little hump here in the ground. This is actually part of the original trolley bed. The trolley then turned here after Elijah Taft's battery, turned and went along the outskirts of the cemetery. So the cemetery, the Evergreen Cemetery, would have been on the hill to its right. There is a famous photograph taken from about right here in 1917, and these twin headstones that you see here in the distance are the Bushman headstones. And I will post that picture. You can actually see the 1917 trolley tracks have been ripped out of the cemetery, and you can see the two Bushman stones in the distance. And right now we're just about to get back on. You can see the Bushman stones here. The trolley then proceeded right here, and ironically enough, there is a bit of a clearing here today where there is nobody buried, where the original trolley tracks were placed. Of course, I'm sure that as the trolley made its way, any passengers that did not get the extra tour would have been told about the action on Cemetery Hill and the Evergreen Cemetery on the evening of July 1st, 1863. The trolley then proceeded southbound here, just on the outskirts of the Evergreen Cemetery. Of course, all this is a newer section that was added at a later date. We are now on what was the outskirt of the cemetery from 1896 up to its demise in 1897. The trolley would proceed this way, and then it would bend to the right, and it would exit right at the Town Road. And that's where we're going to pick it up on our next video. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 6. Here at the Evergreen Cemetery. This is going to be the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 7. And in our last video, we ended up at the Evergreen Cemetery, and at the end of the video I said that the trolley would continue through southbound on the Evergreen Cemetery. It would bear to the right and then come out to the Town Road. And this little hump of ground that you see in front of you is actually part of the original trolley roadbed. I'm going to walk over to it. It's a few inches high, and in certain spots you can actually still see roadbed material. The trolley came right through the Evergreen Cemetery on the outskirts, and then right out here to the Town Road. And the hump that we're walking on is the old trolley roadbed, again at another part where it can be seen. Now, there are two photographs that I'm going to post of the Gettysburg Electric Trolley tracks in this area. The first photograph was taken from a camera position about right here. As it came here, it turned, and there's a photograph taken at this angle. In that picture, you can actually see the trolley tracks as they bend and head northbound on the Town Road. They pass by the 3rd New York Independent Battery. And then there's a second photograph of this battery taken from a camera position about right here, where you can just see the monument and the battery. And in the photograph, you will actually see the left flank marker, which today sits here. It used to sit right here, and this right flank marker actually sat along the wall in that photograph. And I'll go and post the photograph that was taken from this position along with that video. Now, the trolley then proceeded northbound on the Town Road, right along the side here. And then it went to the outskirts of Ziegler's Grove, just a couple hundred yards near the crest of this hill, before it bared to the left. And once it bared to the left, it then would go along Ziegler's Grove and out toward the high water mark. We're going to walk a little bit of the old trolley bed pathway here. Of course, as the trolley was passing this direction, it would have then again went by the Gettysburg National Cemetery, the Soldier Cemetery, and I'm sure that the guide would have explained. This is also the area where the guest that had the paid tour with the guy would have rejoined the trolley as it headed by Ziegler's Grove. In this area here, it would then bend to the left and head along Ziegler's Grove, and we're going to pick it up in our next video in part 8 down at the other end of Ziegler's Grove. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, part 7. We left off where the trolley had turned off the Town Road and headed along the side of Ziegler's Road. There's actually a famous photograph taken from this vantage point, which I'll post, showing the uprooting or the uprooting of ground to put down the trolley tracks in 1895. And there was an article printed in the paper called "The Desecration of the Battlefield," in which preservationists, historians were appalled by the Gettysburg Electric Railway putting the trolley through parts of the battlefield that seen action. And the trolley then proceeded this way in Ziegler's Grove. The hump that we're standing on here and that you see in front of us is still what's left of the original roadbed. However, during the restoration of Ziegler's Grove, which just took place this year, where the area was cleared out, the old visitor center, which was torn down a few years ago, the parking lot was gotten rid of, and this ground was brought back again to its as close as possible to its 1863 appearance. A lot of the trees were raised and so on. In doing that, they actually tore up the ground, and they have to replant the grass, but it kind of looks like it did back in 1896 when they were putting down the trolley bed. Now, the trolley then proceeded in this direction toward the Abraham Bryan farm, which you can see there in the distance. And in part 9, we'll talk about how it then turned off toward the Emmitsburg Road, because the original intent was for the trolley to go just on the western side of the stone wall of Union defenders of Pickett's charge. However, a regiment put an end to that, and it was stopped, and therefore had to turn off and go down the Emmitsburg Road. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 8. In Part 8, we left off just over here, and we talked about the trolley route coming in this direction. Its intention was actually to go through or just on the side of the Bryan farm, and then up to the wall where you see the 72nd Pennsylvania monument in the distance over here. But the 72nd Pennsylvania put an end to that. Their controversial monument and the placement of their monument was a bad and ugly scar on the Gettysburg National Military Park in its early day. But in this case, it saved the day. Because they own the land in front of the monument going out toward the Corridori property, they said that the trolley had not the right of way to proceed through their property. So an alternate route, instead of going to the Round Tops, was in this direction. The trolley came right up here, and then just behind the 107th Pennsylvania monument, the trolley then turned and headed out to the Emmitsburg Road. And there is a photograph taken from about this position here that I'll post, and you can see the trolley tracks bend right behind this monument. It would then go out to the Emmitsburg Road right over here before turning left on a switch right out here where the 8th Ohio Monument sits today. And then from this point, it would head down southbound on the Emmitsburg Road. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 9. And right here on the right is the 8th Ohio Monument. This is where the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, coming from the Bryan Farm, then hit a switch and proceeded southbound here on the Emmitsburg Road. As it crossed this area and headed south on the Emmitsburg Road, at one point it actually crisscrossed an old railroad, the Gettysburg-Harrisburg Railroad, which was a steam-operated railroad that actually crisscrossed right here at this point here in front of us across the road and went by the George Ward Monument from the 15th Massachusetts that you see in the field. We'll do that in another series. The Gettysburg Electric Trolley then proceeded along the side of the Emmitsburg Road southbound in this area, passing the Cordory Farm and up here toward the Massachusetts monuments, which we will take over in our next video. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Railway, Part 10. And in Part 10, we left off near the 8th Ohio Monument, where the Gettysburg Electric Trolley hit the switch and headed southbound toward our camera on the Emmitsburg Road, passing the Cordory Farm. Again, its original intention was to go from the Abraham Bryan Farm in the distance, cut across the copse of trees, and then straight out to the Round Tops. But that was stopped by the 72nd Pennsylvania, who owned a portion of the farm on the other side of the Cordory Farm. So the trolley then came this way in an alternate route down and past where you see my car today. It passed by the First Massachusetts Monument, which there's a picture of that I'll post from this area, where you can see this monument. You can see the barn of the old Peter Rogers farm in the distance. And I'm sure when they passed this area, they did talk about the advance of Perry's Florida Brigade, the 2nd, 5th, and 8th Florida, which came on July 2nd, 1863, right into this area that we're standing now. Anyway, the trolley passed again where you see my car today on the right-hand side of the Emmitsburg Road and proceeded to the Peter Rogers Farm. Peter Rogers Farm in 1863 sat just behind this white picket fence here, a farmhouse and a barn, and it was later torn down and another house constructed, and that house and barn is the one in the photograph. It's also the farm where General Dan Sickles made his headquarters during the 1913 Veterans Reunion. Unfortunately, nothing really exists of the original Peter Rogers Farm except a sign out here that says the site of the Rogers House, 1863. The trolley proceeded on the Emmitsburg Road. Another photograph was taken from this spot right here, showing the 11th Massachusetts Monument, and you can see the tracks along the ground right here where the road splits. And of course, the trolley would then proceed down past the Daniel Klingel Farm here, which you see on the left-hand side of the road, and then around the bend. We'll take up in that area on our next part. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley Part 11 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Trolley Part 12 here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And on Part 11, the trolley came down the Emmitsburg Road. We talked about it passing the Klingel Farm. As you see this bus coming toward us, it was on this side of the road, past the Klingel Farm, past the 11th New Jersey Monument and the Battery here. And in this direction, something happened. There was actually a sideway with a double set of tracks right here. There is a photograph taken from this area. And this would allow trolleys that were operating on the Gettysburg battlefield, since they were going in one direction and then coming back using the same tracks, the sideway allowed trolley cars to pass one another. And we'll talk about an incident where there were some near misses and even some accidents later on. But the trolley then would proceed where you see my car again, is part of the original trolley bed on the Emmitsburg Road. The trolley would pass by these properties, and most likely the guide would then begin to speak about the Daniel Klingel Farm or the actions nearby. I'm sure they talked about the Spangler Farm in the distance over here, and of course the Trossel barn and farm where Dan Sickles brought his third corps, advanced them to the peach orchard, which is here in the distance, right across from the Shurfy barn and the Shurfy farmhouse. So again, as the trolley proceeded through the Gettysburg National Military Park, the battle was interpreted for the riders. The trolley would proceed down past the Shurfy house, and it would make a left at the peach orchard on the Wheatfield Road, and that's where we'll pick up on our next part. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 12. Part 12, we left off heading toward the Shurfy farm, which you can see here on our left-hand side. The monument to the 63rd Pennsylvania Volunteer sits here right at the edge of the Wheatfield Road. The trolley proceeded to this point, and then it began to turn and head down the Wheatfield Road here at the peach orchard. There are a couple photographs taken from this vantage point. One of them taken here shows the old Wentz house. And then the trolley then would proceed on the Wheatfield Road, on the right side of the road here, right along the batteries of Thompson's Battery and Hampton's Battery. And I'm sure when the trolley got to this point, that the guide at this point began to speak of the action of Dan Sickles and the Third Corps here at the peach orchard on July 2nd of 1863. That battle is still very well interpreted on how Sickles disobeyed an order from General Meade and moved and abandoned his original position near Little Round Top to bring his troops here into a salient at the peach orchard, greatly endangering the Union line. The trolley then proceeded here by the peach orchard down the Wheatfield Road, past, like I said, Thompson's Battery here and Hampton's Battery right here. We'll pick this up on our next video. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 13. And in Part 13, we left behind us on the peach orchard, and now we're heading down the Wheatfield Road. The Gettysburg Electric Trolley headed in this direction on the right-hand side down the Wheatfield Road, going toward the bloody Wheatfield. And as the trolley got down to this area, it is very well believed that the actions of July 2nd in the Wheatfield must have been brought up by those guiding the tour on the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. At this point, the trolley would then bend to the right up here by the 118th Pennsylvania Cornhuskers Regiment Monument, and it would cut across the Loop area and the Rose Farm, the Wheatfield area, where it would then come out on the other side, and we'll take it up on our next video there. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 14. And we last shot on the Wheatfield Road, which at the time of the battle was actually called the Millerstown Road. And we talked about, just before getting to the Wheatfield, which is over here, the trolley then bared off to the right and came up in today what area is known as the Loop. The old trolley roadbed ran through this, what is high grass now. And just beyond this over here, right about here, you can see a rise in the ground. That is actually the old trolley roadbed. In front of us here is a Pennsylvania monument that, if you look from its front into the woods, you can actually see a drainage ditch. Let's go over here in front of the monument. Right here, you can see the drainage ditch, and then just beyond the drainage ditch is the old trolley roadbed. The trolley passed right here by the 118th Pennsylvania Corn Exchange Monument, and then headed right over in back into the Wheatfield area over here. And as we're going to walk over here by the left flank marker of the 118th, we'll pick up this area right here. The trolley then went and crossed right over here by the bridge and these boulders before entering the woods on the Rose Farm, on the east side of the Rose Farm property. You have the Rose Farm in the distance over here, the bloody Wheatfield out here, and then this wooded area, and the trolley would then enter that, and that's where we'll take up on our next part. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 15. This is going to be the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 16. In our last video, we were up near the Loop, Stony Hill, Wheatfield area by the 118th Pennsylvania Corn Exchange Monument, which is just up here on the right. The trolley proceeded in this direction toward the camera. You can see the sign for Dieterbrand Avenue, and then just to its right, two big boulders. They have always been called the Sims boulders because it was near those boulders where General Sims was mortally wounded on July 2nd, 1863. The trolley then proceeded this direction and went into Rose's Woods, just southwest of the George Rose Farm. It went through the little wooded area here between the Rose Farm and, of course, the bloody Wheatfield over here on our left. And when it entered the woods, this was more of a wooded, shady area. And we're going to talk about the foundation, because this is probably where the foundation of the Gettysburg Electric Trolley is most evident on the Gettysburg battlefield. First here, the little bridge that crosses Rose's Run was actually built for the Gettysburg Electric Railway. You can see the stone foundation on either side of the bridge and how wide it is. Today, it's part of the Boy Scout walking trail, and there is a little wooden footbridge that crosses Rose's Run. However, the bridge, when it was put up in 1895, it was meant to support the weight of the trolley train, and that's why the foundation is much wider than the footbridge that you see there today. And again, you can see how evident that the roadbed still is. It's very high on each side here. And then, of course, because it's used for the Boy Scout walking trail this day, it's kept looking like a roadbed. It can be muddy and at certain times of the year, and there's a lot of mosquitoes out here, so you do have to be careful if you decide to walk the walking trail. But this is the foundation of the Gettysburg Electric Railway. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Railway, Part 16. And this area here in Rose Woods is very significant for several reasons. There's a lot of actions that happened here with Georgia troops fighting here on July 2nd. And actually in one video, a captain from the 64th New York, Henry Fuller, was killed nearby. And in a Secrets of the Battlefield video, I tell you the way to get to his marker, which is just up here, right against Rose's Run. I'll post those videos too, so if you decide to walk through here, you can actually visit probably one of the least visited markers on the Gettysburg battlefield. But proceeding through Rose Woods, heading out toward the Devil's Den area, the trolley proceeded, and at this point, this is the heart of the battle on July 2nd. I'm sure as the trolley proceeded in this direction across the two bridges where crosses Rose Run, they did talk about the battles at the Wheatfield, Little Round Top. And of course, as we get closer here to Devil's Den, I'm sure Devil's Den began to be mentioned as well in this area. Right up here is the second bridge crossing for the Rosewood area, crossing Rose's Run. And again, just as in the first bridge, you can see the wide foundation that was originally meant for the Gettysburg Electric Railway, and today it's just a small footbridge for the Boy Scout walking trail. And again, these are the little secrets of the battlefield that most people who come to the Gettysburg National Military Park don't ever get to see or hear about. And this was the pathway that we walked starting with video 16. I do want to mention here on part 17 that this is the area where Anderson's Georgia Brigade fought on July 2nd, 1863. The 7th Georgia wasn't used much during that action. They were actually guarding Union cavalry. And then, of course, on the 3rd, they were pushed down southbound on the Emmitsburg Road to protect the Confederate right in probably the last action at Gettysburg, the fight for the Emmitsburg Road near the Cornelius Houteland farm on July 3rd, 1863, from 2 to 9 p.m. at night, ending the Battle of Gettysburg. The 7th Georgia Infantry was a part of that action. As we get to Brook Avenue here, we'll pick up on our next video. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Railway, Part 17, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Electric Trolley, Part 18, here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And we just crossed Brook Avenue, modern-day Brook Avenue, and we're heading toward the Devil's Den area. Again, this is part of the original trolley bed that we are walking on, and today is used as the Boy Scout walking trails. We just passed through the Rosewoods, now on to the Devil's Den area, which of course was known as Halk's Ridge in 1863. There was a small farm over here that does no longer exist called the Timbers Farm. And I did shoot a Secrets of the Battlefield video on the Timbers Farm that once existed there in 1863. The trolley entered here, and this was a very particular piece of ground that it was very offensive for the trolley to have cut through. This is where Texans and Alabamans and Georgians crossed across these fields right here where the trolley bed is on their attack on Devil's Den and Little Round Top on July 2nd, 1863. Some of the most deadly fighting took place in this very rocky, rough ground here on July 2nd, 1863. And when the Gettysburg Electric Railway desecrated the battlefield land, this was one of the spots that was destroyed the most. Up here around the bend, there was an area called the Big Fill, where they actually took filler dirt, building up the roadbed for the Gettysburg Electric trolley. They built a bridge across Plum Run, of which some rocks can still be seen today, and we'll take a look at that. Of course, the Timbers Farm was here in the distance, and as the railway proceeded in this direction, this is where they began to talk about the battle for Devil's Den. We will pick this up in our next video at Big Phil. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 18 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Part 19 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And on Part 18, we began coming into Devil's Den, and we're going to proceed here. This is the Big Phil area of the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. A lot of the boulders that were here were destroyed, and a lot of fill was put up here. You can actually see rocks up here with drill marks in them. The quarry that we looked at earlier in our Devil's Den series is just up the hill there. The trolley proceeded around Devil's Den on the southern end here of the Devil's Den area before crossing Plum Run. And after it crossed Plum Run, there was a sideway again, and at this area was probably the biggest accident that happened in 1910, and we're going to talk about it in our next part. But here in Part 19, we're going to be going down the southern end of Devil's Den to the Plum Run Bridge. This bridge is very much like the ones that we crossed on the Rosewoods, except that the bridge no longer exists and there's no wooden footbridge. The foundation is collapsed actually into the run, and it's right up here ahead. Of course, you can see the Elephant Rock and southern end of Devil's Den, Little Round Top over here, the Slaughter Pen Witness Tree. But the trolley proceeded to wrap around Devil's Den, crossing Plum Run at this point right here. And you can actually see what was the foundation of the electric trolley's bridge supports right here on the side. And that is what exists of it today. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 19. And right here at the bend in the road was an awful collision on Monday, August the 15th, 1910. There were people hurt. One of them was hurt seriously when two cars, the Slocum and the Sedgwick, collided in this area. One of those people that was hurt was actually a man who worked here on foundations and monument bases at Devil's Den. But this was a collision in 1910, and pretty much this was the end of the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. After this collision happened, eminent domain had already taken effect. It was in the process. But now it was proven that the trolley had gone into a state of disrepair. It was unsafe, and that through modern avenues which were being constructed from 1903 on up, that there were better means of transportation through the Gettysburg National Military Park than the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. So it was only a few years after this that the trolley was removed, and then following a year later, the tracks removed. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 20. Okay, this is going to be the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 21. Walking here on the old roadbed of the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, which is today the Boy Scout walking trail, here in the slaughter pen. There's the slaughter pen witness tree, and Devil's Den is to my left. The trolley proceeded in this direction, heading just to the east side of Devil's Den. It would cross the road up here, and then it would proceed to the western face of Little Round Top, and it would cross right in front of Little Round Top. And there are some pictures from this area that I will post along with the video. The trolley would cross by Little Round Top, and it would exit on the Millerstown Road, where it would make a right and meet up with the Gettysburg-Harrisburg Railroad Round Top Spur. If you wanted to take the trolley back into town, you could do so by reversing the route. Now up here today is the bridge that crosses Devil's Den over here to the slaughter pen. The trolley went right by that modern day bridge. In my Devil's Den video series, I did a video on the indestructible rock in which the trolley passed. Now when the trolley got to this point, this is the original roadbed. That over there is not. The trolley actually went straight through this thicket here in this direction, crossed by the indestructible rock, and then headed by the 40th New York Monument. We'll pick that up in our next video. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 21 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And this is going to be the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, Part 21 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And here is the avenue sign that says Warren Avenue. The Gettysburg Electric Trolley actually passed right here, just to the left of the sign, and you can still see a little bit of the hump in the road. It passed and crossed Warren Avenue right here at this rock. And this rock was also the scene of a second accident, when a car that was proceeding down the road here, and it had a guide on the fender, riding on the fender of the car, collided with the train here around the same time period as the other accident, and that guard was hurt. But the trolley then proceeded here by the 40th New York Monument in this direction, straight ahead, just on the western face of Little Round Top. And I'll post some pictures that were taken from this area over here, looking at the trolley tracks and also the telephone poles that once stood in front of Little Round Top. Unbelievable as it sounds, from the period of 1895 to 1916, there were actually telephone poles here in the Valley of Death, so that the trolley could receive its electric power, which of course originated from the power plant back on part 1, all the way through the town and all the way out here. There were poles that were existing along the side of the trolley tracks. The trolley then proceeded straight on Little Round Top before bending to the right and going through the woods, meeting out at the Millerstown Road. And that's where we'll take over on our last couple parts here of the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. This has been the Gettysburg Electric Trolley Part 21. Here on off the northern slope of Little Round Top. Our last video was shot from over Warren Avenue, the Devil's Den area, and I said that the trolley had passed on the western slope through the Valley of Death of Little Round Top. It came up here and right by here. And today there is, and this is also secret to the battlefield, the unknown railroad cut. Everyone knows about the railroad cut over on the first day's battlefield. I am standing in the unknown railroad cut right now. This is the railroad cut. I just walked down this little pathway here. This is the railroad cut that the Gettysburg Electric Trolley used as it ended its journey here at Little Round Top. It actually passed through the woods area. Now, a lot of this has been filled in over the years, but the trolley went right here in the woods through this railroad cut. We're actually walking on some of the old roadbed now of the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. And I'm going to walk through the woods here and follow the route of the trolley right out the thin strip of woods. This stone wall actually sits in the old cut. You can still see the cut where the trolley passed through. And of course it was filled in later. But this is the secret railroad cut that not many people know about. And then as the trolley crossed through this narrow strip of woods, it ended out at the Millerstown Road, made a right, and then headed up to the station where the Gettysburg-Harrisburg Round Top Spur was located. Electric Trolley, Part 23, the end. You have to apologize for my Part 22 video, the hidden railroad cut. As I proceeded through the woods, both one, I began to stumble and get out of breath, and secondly, my time on my video camera ended. So I have to pick it up here where the Gettysburg electric trolley entered out of the woods rather, and came here upon the Millerstown Road. Today there's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. The trolley actually came out just to the right side of this tree, out here, crossed the road, and then proceeded down the left side of the Millerstown Road. Today Sedgwick Avenue runs back and forth. It would cross just over this ridge line, and there it would meet up with the steam line, the Gettysburg-Harrisburg Railroad Round Top Spur. And we'll do that line on another video. At that point, you could go to Round Top Park, you could take the steamliner back in, or you could proceed back through the town the way you came in a backwards direction on the Gettysburg Electric Trolley. Again, the Gettysburg Electric Trolley, which had its beginnings in 1895, and ended in 1916. It was one of the first cases of eminent domain used for historical preservation in the United States of America. A trolley which had operated here for 15 years, had desecrated parts of the Gettysburg National Military Park, and it of course was eventually eminent domain and done away with as modern avenues and car traffic gave visitors better access. This has been the series, The Gettysburg Electric Trolley,